The ocean doesn't kill quickly. First, it traps you. Then it waits. Darkness presses in from every direction. Cold water climbs higher. Metal groans like a dying animal beneath the sea, and somewhere inside that darkness, a man is still breathing, not for minutes, not for hours, but for nearly 3 days. This is the story of Harrison Okene, the man who survived 60 hours trapped inside a sunken ship at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. December 2013. Off the coast of Nigeria, the tugboat Jascon, 4 drifted through rough waters. It wasn't supposed to become a grave. The crew were experienced offshore workers, routine, ordinary, another job at sea. And below deck, Harrison worked as the ship's cook. That morning, nothing felt unusual. But oceans don't announce disasters. They arrive all at once. Without warning, a massive wave struck the vessel. Hard. Violently, the tugboat rolled, then kept rolling. Equipment tore loose. Metal screamed. Water exploded through the corridors. In seconds, the ship flipped upside down. Men were thrown into darkness. Some drowned immediately. Others never even had time to react. Imagine it, pitch black. Ice-cold seawater rushing toward you. No sense of direction. No idea where the exits are. Only panic. And the sound of a ship dying around you. Most never escaped. But Harrison did something instinctive. He moved. Blindly. Desperately. Feeling through submerged corridors as the vessel sank deeper into the Atlantic. Until suddenly, air. A tiny pocket trapped inside the overturned ship. A bubble of life inside a steel coffin beneath the ocean. And then came the realization the ship had stopped moving because it had reached the bottom. At first, survival still felt possible. Maybe rescue teams were coming. Maybe someone knew. Maybe help was already above him. But time changes things. Hours passed. Then more. No voices. No rescue. Only darkness. The Atlantic pressed against the ship with crushing force. Cold water surrounded him. The air smelled of oil, salt, and death. And Harrison wasn't alone down there. Bodies floated nearby inside the wreck. Friends. Crewmates. Men he had worked beside hours earlier. Now silent. The ocean had taken them, one by one. The psychological horror began long before the oxygen became a problem. Because isolation does something terrible to the human mind, especially in darkness. Especially when every sound reminds you where you are. Deep underwater, inside a sinking tomb. The ship creaked constantly, metal bending under pressure, water dripping somewhere beyond the walls. Loose objects drifting through flooded corridors. Sometimes, it sounded like the ocean itself was breathing. Hour after hour, Harrison waited, prayed, tried not to panic. But panic always returns eventually. What do you even think about after enough time passes? Family? Regret? God? Or the moment the air finally runs out? At some point, logic probably said the same thing to him it says to everyone trapped in impossible situations. No one is coming. But Harrison stayed alive anyway. By the second day, his body was beginning to fail. Salt water burned his skin. Cold invaded his muscles. Exhaustion slowed his thoughts. And the darkness never ended. No sunrise. No clocks. No certainty. Just breathing. Waiting. Listening. There are moments in survival stories where people become heroes. This wasn't one of them. There was no victory speech, no dramatic escape, just a man trying not to disappear mentally before he disappeared physically. And somehow, hope remained. Fragile, irrational, but alive. 60 hours beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Most people can't endure silence for 10 minutes. Harrison endured almost 3 days with death sitting beside him. Then, something changed. A sound. Distant at first. Unfamiliar. Metallic. Movement outside the ship. Divers. Rescue teams had finally arrived to recover bodies from the wreck. Not survivors, bodies. Because no one believed anyone could still be alive down there, especially not after this long. Inside the darkness, Harrison noticed a faint light cutting through the water. At first it barely looked real. Like a hallucination, a glow moving through flooded corridors, closer, closer, until suddenly a diver appeared. And for one suspended moment, both men froze, because the diver believed he was entering a graveyard, and the dead man in front of him just moved. The footage still feels unreal today. The diver reaches forward carefully through the black water, and Harrison reaches back, a living hand emerging from the abyss. 60 hours trapped underwater, still alive, against logic, against probability, against the ocean itself. But survival wasn't over yet. The human body cannot simply return from deep underwater conditions without consequences. The pressure changes alone could kill him. Divers had to move carefully, slow decompression, controlled rescue procedures. One mistake, and surviving the wreck would mean nothing. But Harrison endured that too. And finally, after nearly 3 days buried beneath the Atlantic, he surfaced, alive. Most people fear dying suddenly. But Harrison Okene faced something worse. Waiting for death, listening to it. Hour after hour, inside the dark. And yet somewhere in that abyss, hope survived longer than fear did. Maybe that's why this story stays with us. Because eventually, everyone enters some kind of darkness, a season where rescue feels distant, where silence grows heavy, where survival itself becomes exhausting, and the terrifying part is never the darkness alone. It's believing nobody is coming. But Harrison taught us something remarkable. Hope doesn't always arrive as certainty. Sometimes, hope is simply choosing not to quit today. And sometimes, survival isn't about knowing you'll be rescued. It's about refusing to give up before the rescue arrives. For 60 hours beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Harrison had every reason to surrender. He didn't. He kept breathing anyway. One breath, then another. And somehow, that made all the difference.